Good morning, grade 2s. Welcome to our next math lesson. I hope you got everything done for your kilograms. So the last exercise, you were looking at the scale that looks like this if we were in the classroom. And you were looking at that in your workbook and seeing what the different fruit or objects, how much that they weighed. Now, we have a little bit of a problem because what if something isn't a kilogram? What if it's lighter than a kilogram? How do we measure it? And how would we measure it so that anyone around in the world would know exactly how how heavy it is? So if something is less than a kilogram, or it could be between 1 and 2 kilograms, we have the unit called a gram. So 1 gram, and the short form for gram is just the letter G. Okay? So we're gonna talk today, and you're gonna do some measuring of weights that are a gram. Now a gram is really, really light. It's about 2 paper clips. So if you have 2 paper clips at home, you can put them in your hand, see how heavy it is. It is very, very light. Okay? So grams are very light. Okay, and we're going to look at in our textbook today some pictures to kind of talk about some items that would weigh in grams. They wouldn't quite be a kilogram. Now for today you need 2 worksheets that are our number lines, and basically we're going to learn how to read little ticks on a number line so that then when we look at a scale we can know all the little ticks that don't have numbers, what do they represent. Okay, so we're going to start with, I'm going to push this one to the side, so we're going to start with this sheet. So if you don't have this sheet in front of you, press pause and get this sheet. You need your textbook as well, okay? So have this sheet in front of you, and we're going to put our finger on the top line where it says 0, and I want to count how many ticks or how many lines is there to get to 10, okay? So put your finger on 0 and join with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 10 ticks to get to the number 10. So who could tell me how much does each tick or each line represent? How much does it mean? Well, let's try counting. Do you think it's by ones? Well, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're right, because there was 10 lines to get to 10. Each one is 1. Okay? So now if we go over here, you'll see I have an arrow over a tick. I want you to count and see if you can tell me what number that gets us to. Okay? So maybe start at your 20 here. And what is each tick? I'm going to go up by 1. So put your finger on 20 and let's count. 1, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. So above your arrow, I want you to write 27. So that arrow's at 27. Okay? Now we have another number line down below here. And with each number line, you can't assume that it goes up by 1, just like the first one, because number lines sometimes go different. The same with scales. There's different scales that will go up by different amounts. So we have to check first, okay? So let's put your finger back on the 0 again. Okay, now what's the first number we're going to come to? You're going to see that the first number we come to is 100, okay? So put your finger on 0 and let's count how many ticks or lines there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 ticks, just like the first one, but are we going up by ones? If I count by 1, do I get to 100 there? No, I would only get to 10. Who has a guess? There's 10 lines. What are 10 things into 100? Can anybody guess? What would I have to count by? Can I count by 2s? No. If you guessed counting by 10s, you're right. Ready? Put your finger at the 0 and let's test it. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Do I get to 100 on the 10th? Yes, 100. So each line on this one is representing 10, okay? So I have another arrow over here, and I want you to see if you can know what number that arrow is above. What does that line represent? So I think we should start at 200 again. Okay, it's just before. And remember, each tick is 10, so let's count by tens. 210, 220, 230, 240, 250, 260, 270. So our second arrow is 270. Now, if I were to take these number lines and wrap them around to make a circle, because that's what's on our scales, it's a circle, I would get something that looks like our second worksheet here, where I've taken my number line, instead of laying it out flat, I've made it a circle, because that's what a scale looks like. Okay? Now, we always want to start, every time we look at a scale, is to determine what does each tick mean, so that we know what we're counting by. So let's start at the 0, which is at the top, and let's go over to 100 and see how many ticks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 ticks again. Do you remember from the last one on the bottom? If there's 10 to get to 100, what must I count by? 10 to get to 100, I must count by tens. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So each tick is 10. So I want you to tell me if you can find which tick represents 520. So I'm going to write 520 on the board. Can you find which line on our sheet, which tick is 520? Well, if we start at the 0, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. So let's stop at 500. And what does each line mean? 10. So now let's start counting by tens. 510, 520. It's the second line. So with your pencil, draw a line and write 520. Okay? This time, can you find 810 for me? Which line is 810? Well, we can start back at the 0 and go all the way around, or you could see that this was 500. So 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700. There's 800. And each tick goes up by 10. So I just have to go up 1. And this one is 810. Can you mark that on yours? Okay, so that's how scales work. It's a number line, but it's wrapped in a circle, but we have to know what each tick is, because they don't, sometimes they go up by ones, like our first one, and sometimes they go up by tens. Now, in your textbook, I would like you to open up to page 68. Okay, I'll write that on the board here. Open up to page 68 in your textbook. And because we couldn't be in class to do some measuring, I wanted us to open up to this page, because this page tells us some different objects that you might find around your house, or we would have had in the classroom, and you would have had a chance to weigh them. Now, we'll get to do all that when we get back into school, but I wanted you to see kind of how much things weigh, okay? So maybe you could find some of these objects in your home and see what 1 gram or 5 grams feels like in your hand. So on this picture now, this book is made in the United States. So if you look at the coins, they're not Canadian money, they're American money, okay? But a pencil, a normal full-size pencil is about 3 grams. So maybe hold your pencil in your hand and see. Your mom might have a can of soup, and that's almost 400 grams is what a can of soup feels like, and it might even say the weight on the can, so then you can feel different weights. So maybe go in your pantry and see the different weights on the can and feel how heavy that is. If you have an apple's about 100 grams. I mean, there's different sizes of apples, so it might not be exactly. A soccer ball weighs about 450 grams, okay? A tennis ball, about 65 grams. So you could maybe find some of these objects and see what they feel like, okay, to give you kind of an idea. Now, for your work today, you're going to open up in your workbook to exercise 30. Now, you'll notice the first question is something we'll do in the classroom when we get back. We're going to weigh things, we're going to guess how much they weigh and then weigh them. So you're going to start on question number 2. Okay, so don't leave question 1 blank. Start on question 2. And exercise 30 is 2 pages. So then you're going to come over and do the back. Similar to our kilogram, but now you're going to do some objects that are weighing in grams. So when something's not quite a kilogram, we'll weigh it in grams. Or if it's more than a kilogram but not quite 2, we might say it's 1 kilogram and 200 grams to show how much it weighs. Okay, so you're going to complete exercise 30 today, but don't forget you can skip question number 1. Enjoy!